Well, ladies and gentlemen, good evening, welcome, good afternoon, and welcome to the late one with yours truly, SYLBOURNE SYDIAL. And thank you so much for coming on tonight for another exciting time with In Review with yours truly, and also with the team, David, Keisha, and Dr. Burton, which is David, and also Mr. Francis, Anthony Francis. Without further ado, we go straight into it and we get down onto some key topics because this week is going to be, I wouldn't say exciting, but there are always new topics and always new interesting thing which is going on. Like what they're talking about in Oxford, the not in Oxford, but the vaccine question signs around the Oxford AstraZeneca vaccine. Is it safe? EU warns UK over vaccine exports. How can women be more protected? And of course, is Tinder contributing to this whole thing with the safety of women? Did you know that the census, you got to do that by the 21st, so you're going to get 1,000 fines, £1,000. So ladies and gentlemen, that is going to be what we're going to be talking about later today. So without further ado, I will... Here I am. Good evening, guys. How are you doing?
Good evening. I thought I lost you for a second there, SYLBOURNE.
That was a plan, but it didn't work. I wanted Anthony to take the lead. That's why I put him right there in the corner, you know what I mean?
Oh, well, I'm happy to take the lead, SYLBOURNE. Always happy.
Anyway, Keisha, Alan.
Good evening. Good evening.
How are you doing? Good?
I'm doing well. Great to be here.
Fantastic. And Dr. Burton?
All good. Busy day in clinic, out here for your show.
Great and Sir Francis?
That's right. I'm waiting for that knighthood official.
and while I'm here, Mr. MediaNet joined. How are you, sir? Thea, my main man over there on Instagram, and for those joining on Facebook and YouTube. Well, guys, it's another week, and a lot of things has always happened. The Prime Minister gave his announcement today that tomorrow he's going to take his jab, and he's going for the one which is questionable to show confidence. In Jamaica, also the Prime Minister and the Minister of Health saying that they're going to take their jab, but then people start to complain and say what they are putting themselves first. And then they said, okay, we're not going to take our jab first. And then people are saying, hang on a second, why are you not taking it first? You're not showing confidence. So the Prime Minister said, well, what can we do now? If we take it first, they're saying that we're putting ourselves first. If we don't take it first, they're saying we're not showing confidence by leadership, And that is the whole thing which is happening with the whole vaccine. Now, David, I always like to start with you. Where are we now with COVID? Just like an overview. I think the figures are going down.
Yeah, well, we're on the road, SYLBOURNE. We're in a vehicle. We're on the road. We've passed the first block, which was the 12th of March. So kids are back to school, obviously, and we're approaching that second junction now, where on the 26th. We're going to have more communal worship that's going to be allowed, and I think that's if social distancing permits, that will allow us the success of having social worship and more people gathering in spaces. Quite obviously, we're going to touch on the whole vaccine issue very shortly, I won't go too much into that, but that's been a big week in regards to what's happened across Europe, not just in the UK but in Europe as well. But we're on the road. We're going down this path that has been outlined by the UK government, and hopefully we can make those stops off and get things moving. I think that there's a big journey ahead of us. There's lots of hoops to jump through, but it's going in the right direction. Obviously, the number of vaccinations is going up, and we do have other vaccines that are going to be soon approved for use. Well, they have been approved, but will be brought in for use, and that's the Moderna vaccine. So yeah, positivity. I'm always about the positivity, and we're going in the right direction.
Fantastic. And Anthony, I mean, based on how you see things are unfolding now, I mean, it's all over the news, and you're always very ensuring that the government is having effective leadership. I'm not going to say you're critical. You just like to ensure. What's your take on them and how things are happening now?
Well, as David has said, I think it's a good news story, and I think we touched on this last week. It's really a credit to the doctors and nurses and all the volunteers who have been involved in leading this effort to try and get as many people vaccinated as possible. And
Yes.
I was also reading as well this afternoon that America have also passed 100 million jabs out there in the States. You know, they had a target to try and get to that when I think Biden took office. So I think overall, you know, we should be really grateful that the scientists, you know, people like David, etc., who have worked hard to get this vaccine available to us. We should, you know, really look forward to sort of seeing a light at the end of the tunnel. And actually, those of us, when our time gets called to go and get the vaccine, should go and do so. I mean, I had mine last Saturday, and I would obviously welcome and recommend all other people when they get their call to go and do the same.
Okay, fantastic. And Keisha, how are you? And what's your take on how things are going? Have you got your vaccine? Are you ready for the world? Ready to getting out of the lockdown?
I'm still in waiting, I'm afraid.
Mm.
Still in waiting, and I'm hoping that my vaccine comes quite soon. I'm looking out for the letter. Every letter I get these days, I'm checking to see if it's my turn yet. But obviously, I'm still under law pecking order, I suppose. But
Right.
yeah.
Well, one of the first things that I just wanted is touch on is what the Prime Minister said. He's saying that the Oxford AstraZeneca vaccine is safe, say Boris Johnson. And this is about the recent news that Europe is actually putting a stall on the vaccine based on the whole blood clot issues. If it was in Jamaica, people say, what kind of blood? Anyhow, you know what I'm saying? I don't know if Anthony know about the Jamaican expletive words, which have a colorful way of expression. You know? But, you know, that's where
What part of colour don't you understand here, Selborne?
I'm sorry?
I said, what part of my colour don't you understand here?
Well, I still don't. Just because persons have a color pigmentation of black doesn't mean to say they understand Jamaican colorful expression at the same time. And you know, not saying I'm trying to undermine your intelligence that you don't know Jamaica, Anthony.
I don't know what you're talking about, Sylbourne.
I have no idea. But I thought I saw you and I saw you, Keisha, and Usain Bolt and former Barbara Gloden and those people say you're honorary Jamaican, so I don't know what you're talking about. You don't understand Jamaican colorful terms. But maybe can we pick up on that bit there as to is it, and Anthony, you can go on, pick up right after that. Is it a Brexit political thing going on? But David, is there any credibility or questions?
Listen, Sylvan, there always has to be questions asked. Okay, I think it would be foolish not to ask questions, foolish not to examine the data and the evidence, and foolish not to act on it. Now, I think it's obviously out there now that through certain agencies that the vaccine is safe. But what I would say is that the vaccine has always been safe in this regard. And what I mean by that is, in terms of the posturing of particular politics behind it in regards to the way that some certain states have acted within Europe. I think you'll have to cast your mind back a week or so ago before the question about the vaccine being safe. And there was discussions between members of the European Union in regards to whether there would be a ban on export of particular vaccines out of Europe. And you know, that's, I think, where all of this started from. And then there was the whole discussion about whether the vaccine in itself was safe, and certain member states deciding that they weren't going to utilize it, even in the face of common knowledge that the vaccine was safe. And so, you know, had certain parties come out, certain influential scientific bodies come out and say, look, this vaccine is safe. And obviously, it wasn't until today that there was a formal report that was deemed to at least be favourable for some of the European states to now say that they've dropped this ban. But it was all political for me, and that's the problem with all of this. When you have science and scientists saying, "Look, this is what's right, true, just, and worked and proven," and then you have political bodies that want to basically make a point or a statement in and amongst all of this, because it wasn't all of the European member bodies that decided to ban this vaccine. It was a root cause of about 4 or 5 at the time of speaking yesterday, or at least looking at the reviews yesterday. So that's the issue at hand that I had with all of this. And what does it achieve? Now, that's the problem. It has a big knock-on effect for people, because now even if the states decide to reintroduce the vaccine, there's a question mark, a heavy question mark against the vaccine and its use, and in an already present state where people have reservations about taking vaccines, and it's right, if you want to have a reservation about something, you should think about it. But whenever you have something like this, it kind of tarnishes all of the positive work that communities, that leaders have had in trying to get the facts out there to people, to make the reasoned choice as to whether they should take the vaccine or not. And when you question the safety, I've always banged on about the fact that for me, and I think for most people, if you prove that something's safe and effective, then your choice is very little in regards to trying to take the vaccine. So all of that good work that has been done over the past few months, weeks, in terms of trying to reduce people's anxieties, worries, fears, has been dashed out the window because of politics for me. And I think that's the dangerous game. And I think that there should be some apologies. There should be some apologies on behalf of the politicians that decided to take this stance.
Are you actually saying that it is totally politics and there's no credibility, there's no sort of scientific evidence that they may have to think so?
No, and what I'm saying in essence is the way that this has been pushed about, in my humble opinion, is just to contrive something that makes it as though this thing is unsafe, where it's very difficult for someone to look at this and say, okay, well, it is unsafe. So let's just look at the raw numbers. 20 people have had related clots, whereas the numbers of persons receiving the vaccine is far in excess of that, millions, right? And it's very difficult for us to ascertain in the real world what number of persons would have had this particular blood clot that they're talking about, which is cerebral blood clot. Now, the numbers are so small; it's such a rare entity. And what we know is that the governing bodies for health care and drug safety have all come out wholeheartedly and said, look, this is safe. The risks of taking the vaccine are far less than the benefits afforded to people. So the benefit of taking this vaccine is far greater, in other ways, than the risks afforded to it. So that's the point I'm trying to make here, that if you ban something, that makes it look as though the product itself is a problem, and it doesn't make any particular sense that four nations decided just to ban it without any real medical assimilation of evidence. So that's my issue with it all. If the European drug agencies, if the MHRA, if they had came out at this very start, if the WHO had come out and said, look, this product does not work and this is the science behind it, then I'm all for it. That's fine. I don't want anybody to take away a segues of what I'm saying here. They haven't done that. They didn't do that. They've put out a report, and I think it's very wrong for people to act so quickly. When I say people, I'm talking about governments here, in a political manner, when health is foremost. That's the issue I've got.
Okay, before I go on to Anthony and Keisha, let me just say hi. Welcome to person Michelle Clark. Welcome Herbert. SYLBOURNE as colorful as a Caribbean. Okay, what can I say? Kima is here, even though she's not there, but she's here. Michelle Clark, exactly. SYLBOURNE. Keisha, innocent as ever. I don't know innocent about what. And Atika from Jamaica, welcome. And for those on Instagram, Tato Cash from South Africa, my good man, welcome. Okay, let me go on to Anthony now, Mr. Truth. Earlier, Anthony was messing around with his, ring light, and he put it over his head. And I said, right, Mr. Truth, the truth is here. Anthony, is this a political thing, or is there any sort of substance or any evidence that the EU, which is the big bloc, the EU, which was the major partner of substance that many people wanted to stay in, are we trying to say that they don't have any relevance there? Is it
listen, yesterday we heard President Macron actually say that he was trying to contact the makers of AstraZeneca because there was a delay in getting the vaccine to France, and at the same time he was saying that they were obviously not necessarily banning it. There was a temporary pause while they carried out this looking into these few cases of clots. And as David has already mentioned, and I don't want to repeat what he said, I personally do believe there's a little bit of political shenanigans at play here. And I think the really good news for us is that we got our orders in quickly with the Oxford AstraZeneca team. We supported them. We heard yesterday we were part of the production element as well. And that's the reason why we've had 25 million plus people have been vaccinated. So yes, of course, there is some political shenanigans at play here. But I think overall, hopefully, the people of the UK will see that the uptake has been tremendous. There has been no negative consequence of people over here since they've received the vaccine that's been reported. And I think that is all bodes well for people to have confidence going forward.
That is interesting. I'm going to bring on Keisha. Keisha, we always come with this the balanced voice here. Keisha, what's your take? Because everybody right here is more saying that the EU has no basis and it's political. What do you say? And I'll hear what other persons are saying as well.
It might be political, but that's not my focus or emphasis at the moment. I think I'm more concerned about what the World Health Organization has to say about the matter. And as far as I'm concerned, they have said, or at least they've emphasized, that there is no currently there's no evidence linking the vaccine to the blood clots, and I have confidence in that statement. And so I think that's how I'll approach it. I mean, it may be political. I tend to agree, but to a certain extent. But at the moment, I think there's so much negativity around taking the vaccine. I think we should just focus on the positive, which is there is no. There's a statement that there's no evidence of it, and so therefore we should just move on.
I totally agree. I totally agree with Keisha. And just before we move on, Selbon, just something really to point out, and I'm sure Doctor will concur, that one of the side effects, or if it's not really a side effect, but one of the consequences of catching COVID is that it actually does cause blood clots in your lung. And clearly, what you want to be careful of is people are saying, oh, there's 4 or 5 people who have got a clot from taking the vaccine out of 20 odd million, or maybe or slightly more. The consequences of not taking the vaccine and catching COVID are far greater. And I think that's something that people perhaps, if they looked into it in a bit more detail, would perhaps be aware of. So, clearly the benefits of taking the vaccine far outweigh the risks.
Yes.
One of the things that many people say sometimes, like you have Black Lives Matters, and people will say, okay, all life matters. Some people are actually saying, okay, so 50 persons may have died, or X amount of persons have been affected by the blood clot. Is it that they are not relevant just because 50 million or so is okay? Is there any case, or just look at it?
No.
No, David.
Oh, Selbon, 25 or so million people have taken this vaccine, 100 million in the US, and we're talking about a handful of cases. It's almost, the figures are so small, it's not even worthwhile talking about. Yes, people have had side effects, but you get side effects from any medication. There is a possibility of some side effect of some cause. And that is just part of the risk of taking a particular medication or going through a particular medical procedure. I mean, we can't live in this society where everything is 100% guaranteed every time. And if there's going to be the odd 0.01% that some people have an adverse effect, surely that's got to be outweighed by the number of people who will be benefited. So I don't think the 4 or 5 people or whatever, they're not insignificant, but I don't think it should play a significant part in us deciding whether or not we should take the vaccine or not.
Well, I'm just being a conduit of different voices. I'm right here. I've got to be that. David, you want to wrap up on that point?
Anthony's basically spilled out the thought process behind this. As I leaned on earlier, it's about a risk-benefit analysis, and the benefit of taking the vaccine outweighs this particular risk that we talk about. And that's the key finding here. Quite obviously, the questions need to be raised. I have no problems with questioning. This is science at the end of the day. We need to be scientists. We ask questions. The minute you stop asking questions, that's the minute you stop moving forward. But the point I'm trying to make here is that upon answering that question, upon answering that question, which was done early on by the health authorities in respective countries, the safety drug agencies in respective countries, the European safety agencies, the MHRA, they answered that question very early on. The WHO came out and said it very early on, yet these countries decided to still carry on with their course of action. And that's the quizzical point here, because it makes people ask further questions, which is normal. You're going to ask more questions,
Yes.
especially if you already have reservations. And that's the problem. I can't actually say that anymore. I think the thing here is, I hope that people have digested the fact that the drug is safe, that if their intention for not taking the medication is something else, that's perfectly your choice. But this shall not be the sword that you die on, because it's not the right sword.
Okay, and then that point now, should employers make it mandatory for people to take vaccine? Anthony, I'll bring that one to you, as you're into that sort of zone there as a business consultant. You think that is
in my humble opinion, I don't think it should be mandatory for employers to mandate to employees that they should take the vaccine, because don't forget, as David just mentioned, it is a personal choice if you wish to take the vaccine or not. And if a company or an organization mandates that you must do something, that is against, I would say, your personal human rights in terms of what you want to do, in terms of, I want to do this or I want to do that. So I don't think it should be made law, or any organization should have any control over what you do or do not do. If you want to take it, take it. If you don't want to take it, that's fine, then you don't take it. But I don't think it should be mandated at all that employers should do that for employees. And I know what the next question is going to be. If you don't then take it, does it mean that the company can sack you? Well, again, I would think not, because that would be against employment rights. And I think any country or any organization that put that on an employee, that they must do what they tell them to do, I don't think they would have a chance in court if it went that far.
And people are planning to travel. Keisha, people are planning to. Keisha, you want to say something?
I want to touch on that, because I slightly disagree with Anthony. I'm afraid. I mean, you can use the same argument like wearing your mask. In some places, it's mandatory to wear your mask, and that's obviously limiting people's freedoms. And likewise, when you go to work, you are not doing this for yourself. You're not taking the vaccine just for yourself. You're actually you're taking it because you want to protect your other employees as well. So to an extent, I think that it is within the employer's right to say they should make it mandatory. You're absolutely right in terms of the employment law around it, but I'm sure there will be other cases, and this is going to be like a test case anyway, because there's going to be like an argument around the health and safety of the employers, and therefore they have a right to make certain decisions. So it will be problematic in a sense, when you look at the complication behind it. But the reality is, I think employers should be actually, if necessary, make that decision. And if I was an employer, I would actually make it mandatory, because I'm thinking I want to get back to normality, and I want my employment to function in a certain way that I am assured that all my employees are safe. And I think.
Can I ask you a question then, Keisha? If you were to come around and visit me, before visiting me, would you have to say to me, "I want to see your confirmation that you've had the vaccine"?
If I went to visit you,
yeah.
If I went to your house, no. But if you come to in an employment environment, I do expect if you're going to come to if you're going to come to work in my place of work, my workplace, therefore you should actually have like a passport to say you have been vaccinated, so that everybody who's actually working in that environment are all safe.
Well, to each his or her own.
I'll give a bit more clarity from my point of view.
Yeah.
I think there are going to be some certain jobs that will require you to have vaccinations. We already have vaccinations in the NHS. So, for example, we're screened before going into medicine for hepatitis, and we're asked to take Hep B vaccines.
Is it mandatory though?
We're asked to take it.
Is it mandatory? So if you object from taking it,
well, there'll have to be grounds for you not to take it.
Yeah,
real good going grounds, and that's the whole point of that, is protection. So if I'm in somebody's chest, I'm doing a procedure, and I unfortunately get a needle stick injury, then I'm protecting myself, but I'm also protecting the patient, because I know that I will have a low likelihood of having Hep B and passing that to my patient. So there are certain jobs, but I can also see other jobs where the likelihood of taking a vaccine is going to be very low. So if I'm a gardener, for example, I'm outside most of the day, are working by myself, I'm self-employed, there's a very low likelihood that for the job that I do, I'm going to be interacting with other people. So I'm just giving you examples. I think that it's going to be profession specific, and I don't think that the government, humbly speaking, I don't think the government's going to back this to the hilt. And I do think you're right. It's going to be a kind of case law in regards to how things go moving forward. So whilst I know there's a difficulty here and that people are worried about the idea of jobs mandating, I think we just have to look past that and say, look, we want to get as many people as possible out there taking the vaccination so everybody feels safe and secure. And the fallback thereafter occurs, rather than thinking about specific jobs and roles, because we can get detracted, we can lose focus, the argument becomes a little bit fragmented, and when we start finger pointing. I think just encourage people to, and stop giving false information, and stop making people feel that the vaccine is not safe by politicizing it.
Michael Gove is presently, I believe he's still working on that issue about the passport, the vaccine passport. I think you're still in the woods on that. The jury's not out on that as yet. And as well, regarding airplanes, I think EU is saying that's not going to be, but I guess it's out there now, whereby we're not too sure about that. But I want to pick up what a couple of persons are actually saying. And before I move on to the next topic to link with about students, each are his own, but I know my family and I won't be taking it. They do research tests on some of the healthiest persons, people with no kind of illness, and want to administer it to millions of people. That do, everyone is different. That's a voice. That's a voice which is out there. Cecily, welcome. She's from Jamaica. From Jamaica, as you have heard, I don't know if you've heard, but that someone stole the vaccine, and a guy's out there selling vaccine on the street, saying vaccine, 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 vaccine. I put that on the video. And
you need to find that video. I want to see that. I mean, who would have thought of seeing
the video? I don't want to put it out there. Next thing I'm saying, I'm onto Vox promoting it, but the guy's there selling the video, and he's going like this and say, hey, you know what I mean? Anybody from Jamaica can confirm that to me, because they actually lost one of the, what do you call, David, a vial of the vaccine.
I think it was several vials, apparently.
Wow. Yes. So that's it. I don't know what happened. People are saying is people from government or whatever like that, but I'm just being a conduit of information at this moment and trying to be very responsible at it.
You could get anything on the black market these days, isn't it? Even vaccine.
All right. Well, listen, a point I want to bring up now, though, and Anthony had flagged it up earlier in discussion, and that is about the impact on children, teachers' assessment results this summers of COVID, because teachers now, make sure your child is on good term with that teacher, are going to be the one determining results. Anthony, I mean, your daughter is a teacher. What's your take on this aspect now? COVID is impacting everything.
Yeah, I think this is going to be quite a challenge for both the teachers, the teachers, the students, and for the wider workplace, because you're going to have students who will be taking who will be getting these assessments, go into employers, and I'm pretty sure that some organisations will look at someone's qualifications, and there may be some what's the word I'm looking for? There may be some negativity around if the fact that they're given an A grade or whatever, and they can't prove that they sat an exam. And I think that's what a number of students have actually said they're going to miss the opportunity of doing, is actually sitting the exam themselves to see what level they would have got. And for it to be down to for the teacher's assessment, it does mean it's open to interpretation, and also in terms of how those students will then be perceived by potential employers when they go and present their examination certificates and their grades. How will they be seen? Will they be seen as the COVID students, and therefore their grades shouldn't be recognised? Or will they be seen as not as good as candidates who do have recognised qualifications? So I think that's going to be quite a challenge for employers and universities to really get their head around the teacher assessments when those students obviously have to go through that particular path.
Because without a doubt, the children have been having a struggle this whole period of time, whereby they have to be working from home, studying from home, spending all that money at the same time, and they're somewhat in a very terrible predicament at the same time. But Keisha, what's your take on this, the whole assessment?
Well, you see, I suspect this was going to happen, right? So in the case of my son, I've got a 6-year-old. When we were obviously working from home and study and obviously homeschooling at the same time, the school used to send us all this information that he has to complete, all this assessment he has to complete by the end of the day. So I'll give it whilst I'm actually doing my working from home, job. I'll ask him to do his work, right? And then by the end of the day, before he actually upload everything to the teacher, I'm checking everything. And there are parts when he may get it wrong, and I'm like, no, I need you to get 100% on this paper. So this the answer is this, or you need to change this to make sure it's that. So to make sure that it's actually top marks that's going out to this teacher, because I always suspect this is going to happen. It's all going to come down to the teacher to determine the what particular grade should be allocated to your child, given the circumstances. So I figured, I say all this to say that I'm expecting teachers to be really flexible and reasonable with this, because not everybody is actually in certain situations where they actually could carry on studying, and they could be more, take control of the situation and learn outside of school, outside of a school environment. And so therefore, it is a tricky one. It's quite unfortunate, because I take your point, Anthony, that some children want to do an exam, but I reckon that most children probably wouldn't want to take an exam, but if they could get a good grade in spite of, given the circumstances, I think they'll take it and run. But yes.
And David, what's your take on that?
I think the good thing is that I think this will be very short-lived. I don't think it's going to affect a whole section of a generation. I think it's just going to be hopefully maybe a few years in the making. But schools will want to get back to the kind of educational system that it had before COVID. I do know that, for example, grammar schools are still sitting exam entries for kids to go to grammar school. So there's a way and a means around this. So thankfully that's a good thing. I think, unfortunately, for those that it's going to affect, I do share Anthony's concerns that future employers may well look at this. I think one way around it, though, for this particular cohort of kids, is that when going for future employment, maybe the extra additional things that you would go to university for example. So, for example, the masters, PhDs, those sort of things may well add value to their particular circumstance. So you've just kind of got to think outside the box. What was going to set me apart for future employers down the line, given the circumstances that I found myself in, if going to university or going to college or whatever it is? What community partnerships can you build? Show evidence of that. What external schemes can I go on to, Duke of Edinburgh scheme, that sort of thing. It may well awaken that particular inner goal or motivation more so than it would have had you just sat your exams. I say just sat your exams because it's a big thing. A levels are big, GCSEs are big. All these exams are big exams. SATs exams are big. All of them are big because they're stepping stones to the future. But you may find that children become a little bit more conscious of the fact that maybe they want to do a bit more than they're currently doing. And don't get me wrong, kids are doing a lot at this moment in time, but it may well open doors for those kind of things to add a little bit more credence to their workload. It's a difficult time, difficult situation. To ask teachers to make this final decision is difficult as well. You can see there may well be vested interest from a school point of view to give better grades. There may well be interest in regards to friendships between kids and teachers and so on and so forth. But again, I go back to the top of the line when I say that I think this is going to be very short-lived. I do think the focus has got to be on getting kids through schools, getting them to the level of education that's required, not just focusing on exams, of course, but getting them integrating, mixing, developing the social skills, all of those things. I think that's going to come. And I hope that 2022 brings that for us. 2022 will give us all a clue. Let's give some kind of consensus to that.
Well, without a doubt, I believe 2020, 2021, I believe employers and everyone will realize that this was a period which was deemed to be like a lull, in the system, and everybody's going to take that into consideration in some respect. Kima, who is our resident guest on the virtual side, has said middle-class children are okay, though. She said they have had tuition all along. It's the poorest children that will suffer. What's your take on that? What Kima is actually saying?
I don't know that middle class kids are going to be okay. I think all kids have suffered throughout the whole of this. I think that unless you can really pay for private tuition,
Yes.
which are people really the higher end of society, and that's the few end, the fewest. Sorry, I think all kids have suffered. Kids who would normally go play football, boys and girls on a Saturday, can't do it now.
Yes.
Can't mix
Yes.
and mingle.
Yes.
Can't go and climb a tree. Can't go and play in the park with other kids. That's all kids, essentially. I know there's sounds like I'm saying all lives instead of black lives and all that jazz, but my point that I'm trying to make is
Yes.
more often than not these kids have all suffered to an extent, and I think that the great thing about the 12th, I keep marking the 12th of March in the diary, the great thing is that kids got back to school and got socializing and got mixing and mingling again, because just for their sanity's sake, for their development, I think it's a great thing for them to do.
Fantastic. Anthony, any last word on that? I'll just move on.
No. I think we've covered that one in the sense of, at the end of the day, yes, I think the point that Kima was making, that some children from maybe wealthier background families or maybe private schools may be able to provide maybe a slightly higher level of support over this period. But at the end of the day, as David has pointed out, it's probably all children have had to suffer the same, because they've had to not be at school, they've had not to be able to mingle with their teachers and their friends, and they haven't had that dynamic environment that they would normally have. So I think it has affected all, but maybe some have maybe been affected lesser than others.
Yeah. Okay. So ladies and gentlemen, tonight on the show we got Keisha Allen, one of the resident guests. We have with myself today as well Dr. David Burton, regular, where we talk about various different things for the past lockdown period, and my neighbor who's just 5 minutes away. I just rope him in. Sir Anthony Francis, Mr. Truth, who is here. And thank you for those on Instagram. Thank you for those on Facebook as well. YouTube, please share this. There's been a topic which has been going around, ladies and gentlemen. And it is of recent days. We had seen the death of this young lady in Clapham. And as you can see from the image which I put up there, pangender gender of violence, 1 in 40 women aged between 16 and 24 in England and Wales experience rape or assault by penetration, including attempt each year. Office of National Statistics estimates suggest. One of the reasons why this is a topic now is through the recent death of Sarah. And just put it into context, I wanted to sort of look at it, ladies and gentlemen, and Anthony and guys, is to how does this sort of pawn out now? Many people are talking. Sorry, I'm trying to get rid of this image here. Here we go. There's been a lot of question around the safety of women, the domestic violence, and how can men protect women. One minister of government or MP said men should be put on curfew at 6 p.m. David, are you on the road? Anthony, are you on the road? I'm in my house, so I'm okay with that, and also the fact that most of the violence towards women is by men. Keisha, let's go with you first. What's your take on this? And I mean, it's been a matter which has been going on. A lot of ladies, when they came to a demonstration, they were talking about the reason why they brought the lockdown and just had to be there is because they believe it's been on deaf ears for years. And the Sarah death just sort of spiraled it. We're just using Sarah as the springboard, not talking about her case or anything, because it's in trial at the moment.
Yeah, you're absolutely right in terms of what's been happening for years. I think, for example, rape crimes is very low convictions. Domestic violence has been going on for a long time, and then clearly there's no redress or convictions around that as well. So I think the onus and the emphasis shouldn't really so much be on women, but more on the focus should be on men trying to provide additional support to women. And even though that MP suggested, I think it's quite exaggerated example for men to be given a curfew. I think what she's actually trying to say is it's about time that greater responsibility falls on the men, in terms of they should be coming up with a solution to avoid to protect women, right? So I think from a start, for example, we talk about sex education, but I think we should be more focusing on educating young boys about how to protect young girls at school. I think there should be maybe a curriculum on that specifically around for young boys. I also think that we have this victims culture where we blame the women, for certain issues, rather than actually reinforcing that it's never the victim's fault, and so we need to change the way how we actually approach or treat women when they come forward as a victim, instead of say it's your fault or try to dismiss it or set it aside. We should actually have more of a culture where we actually empathize and look further into the situation, and not let these women feel as if there's no one out there that can actually provide that type of support in the system. And also when it comes to young girls in particular, I actually think that the young girls in particular should be taught healthy boundaries. And so when they should develop a sense at a young age, if a guy step into my space and I suddenly feel uncomfortable, then they should actually develop that confidence to set them straight right away and say, and actually have that voice to say, I'm not happy with the closeness or you actually coming forward and occupying my space. So I think there's a need as well to encourage young girls to have a voice, to speak out, and not really just allow boys to actually invade their space and don't know what to do or how to actually approach the matter. So there's a lot of areas that we can look into and we should be looking to as a community. But I think there should be some good that come out of it. Clearly, you see on the news, there's a lot of marching going on, a lot of protesting going on. But I think I'm hopeful that instead of actually just another protest in the pandemic, surely people should be looking at these issues in a greater way and do something about it.
Before I go on to Anthony, David, what's your take on the general ethos of thing? Like, we all married men at the same time, and we have children. What's your take on the protection of women? Because it is getting big. It is whereby it is the latest level of demonstration now, which they're saying is impacting, and government and police and everybody don't want to really be very rigid and strict with their enforcing of COVID rules.
It's a really difficult one there, isn't it? So people should have the right to protest. I think that's the first thing I would say. And in terms of protesting, I think from protesters' point of view, you've got to have that ability to want and desire to feel protected and safe, and to protect others as well. So maintaining your social distancing, wearing protective face masks, etc., etc. So I think both have to be balanced. I don't think taking away people's right and I say protest, to march, to show solidarity, that sort of thing. It should be allowed, and I don't think restricting people's ability to do so is a great thing for any particular society, but particularly for this society in itself. In regards to women and the protections afforded to them, women and men, black and white, everybody should have a fair shot at society and feel the ability to progress in the society. And undoubtedly, women do feel that they are being oppressed in some way, shape, or form, and those kind of oppressions should be lessened, and equalities should be sought. What I will say on this idea of equal union between people is that whilst it is definitely an aspirational aim and should be met, I think at this moment in time, again, sorry to relay back to COVID again, but I don't want to tap into women's fears. And what I mean by that is for women who may well already be on the sort of edge or precipice, we're tapping into their fears to make them feel that they can't go out and that they can't embrace other people, that the streets are not safe for them. I don't want there to be an not exaggeration isn't the word, but for them to not feel safe, because at this moment in time, we need to get people back out in a safe environment. We're moving along successfully with a roadmap to get people back out into communities. And whilst I completely recognise the grievance for women, I will say that I don't want to tap into people's fears and anxieties, because part of that will mean that some women just feel that they can't go out because of the events, most recent events, and so I don't want them to feel that the support isn't there. More often than not, communities are there to protect people. More often than not, the police is there to protect people, and to allow people to practice and do things in their life accordingly. And I'm not saying that everybody should get out in the streets and start hugging, kissing, and not respect any of the rules that exist. But at the same time, what I am saying is that the streets are safe, the police are doing their jobs effectively, things are moving in the right direction in regards to the way that we're trying to unlock, and women should not feel unsafe in the streets of the UK.
Okay, well, I bring in this other point now. As dating apps like Tinder change the landscape of male-female relationship, Anton, if I bring you in on that particular point, because the whole game has changed in a way, isn't it? What's your take on that from that perspective?
Well, yeah, I mean, I concur with what our other guests have said. I mean, the other thing I have to point out before I just comment on the dating apps is, clearly, it's fair to say that men, not all men, carry out these type of heinous acts. So, to sort of cast aspersions that it's all men, or we should protect ourselves from men, quite frankly, is really putting men in a way that I think is unjust. Yes, there are situations where I believe that better education for the police, better education and training for HR staff in workplaces, so that women can report any concerns they may have, and there should be better training for the police, so that if someone comes forward with any sort of issue where they feel threatened in any shape or form, that should be dealt with the same seriousness of any other crime. But for me, I think there is a danger that it's all of a sudden men are seen as being the bogey people in regards to, women can't walk the street because there's a man across the road. Women can't go to a shop because there's a man there. Women can't go to a pub or whatever. I mean, what do we want? Do we want a society where men all stay in and women all go out? I mean, if that's what some of these protesters want, then it'll be a fairly sad world if that's the case. Going on to your point about Tinder and these apps, I think what these apps have now done, sadly, is they've lowered the sort of values that people, certainly the younger generation, seem to have. Morally, I don't feel I have to first of all put a disclaimer. I've never used any of these apps. However, from what I've read and from what is in the public domain around apps like Tinder, it's an app which encourages some sort of promiscuity amongst both male and female participants. And for me, those sorts of moral values that encourage that type of behavior through a device that simply allows you to swipe left or right, or just to see people as images and not as people, I think is very dangerous. And I think we've gone down a slippery slope with introducing these types of free-for-all apps that encourage this sort of promiscuous behavior.
One of the things that I was listening to some ladies the other day, and they're putting out some basic things that men can do, and if anybody else can even share it, they said if you're walking on the road and you're walking behind a lady, what you can do is walk a bit distance, or go across the road, or even if you got a phone, go on the phone and talk, or something. Some of the things. Yeah, I mean, I know you're shaking it, but what do you think? What are some practical things?
It's nearly the same with COVID now, in the sense of people walking on the pavement, and if they see someone coming who hasn't got a mask, or if they're in a shopping complex, a supermarket, you see people now walking around people simply because of fear of catching COVID from somebody. Yeah. And to be in a situation where society that all women walk on one side and all men walk on the other, I mean, where this is just impractical and stupid.
Yeah. I must say, because one time I felt offended when a lady crossed the road and I was coming, even though I understand the whole thing, about this was COVID inspired sort of movements. Because when I'm walking in the morning and we see somebody, we get eye to eye contact, as to say who's gonna go across the road first or whatever like that. But one happened once when somebody just crossed over, and I felt offended there briefly. and things like that. But anyway, I mean, we wait for the best for women. I don't know if anybody want to say anything more, but I just wanted to just bring that topic up briefly. You know, we can just move on and tap into the census, guys. Who is taking the census? Has anybody got the census yet?
Yes.
I got the form. I haven't filled it in yet, but I'm going to.
Yes. I mean, it's easy to complete online.
Yes, it is easy to complete. I've got the form here, but one of the things that somebody put out, and somebody was saying they're actually back with this whole thing, trying to force people £1,000 if you don't do it by the 21st of March. You know?
Is that what it says on the letter?
Oh, you didn't read it?
No, I just saw the part that says it is by law you have to complete it. I'm like, okay then.
Yes,
That's
yes.
all.
It says you must complete the census by law. If you do not,
Yeah.
or if you supply false information, you could be fined up to £1,000.
So that's if you provide false information, you're fined £1,000, not if you don't complete it.
If you do not, or if you do not, you are to complete the census by law. If you do not, that is one. Or if you supply false information, you could be fined up to £1,000.
Okay.
I mean, David can get away with that because he can pay £1,000 very easily. You know what I'm saying?
That's because you pay me every show, Silbourne. That's why I'm here.
Most of us, we better complete it.
Yeah, I get paid every time, so I'm good. So thank you very much, Silbourne, for helping me out. I paid my BBC license through you as well, Silbourne. So thank you so much.
But there's something though. What do you guys think is one of the key purpose of the census, though? The key purpose of the census.
Well, I've always been told that the key purpose is to just give government a bigger or better picture of of the whole nation, to see to understand the dynamics of the of the whole nation. So, for example, there's a section that you'll have to complete about occupants, how many occupants living in your house. And I think the reason for that is maybe to implement a particular type of housing policy to reflect, the what is actually being reflected in all these in the survey or the online or the form itself. Or if there's I think they might ask a question around ethnicity, which I know some people will feel uncomfortable about. But I think that's just to give the government an idea as to equal opportunities policy that they might want to implement. So I think it's to help us. I think, at least help the government to help us in a way to implement policies that will actually
to understand what resources they're going to put in.
Exactly.
Like that. And one of the things is, for the first time, there'll be voluntary questions on gender identity.
Oh, okay.
For over 16. So therefore, you can identify as a block or electric wire or a car. Yes? Sorry.
That's exaggerating.
In the UK, there are no official.
I haven't seen the option yet.
Yes, yeah.
Are you sure that's a white space question?
No, it's there. For the first time, there'll be a voluntary question on gender identity for over 16.
But is it a white space question? I.e., you can put in an answer, or is it a selected answer?
I presume, I've not done it yet, so I presume it would be selected questions. Because what they say, in the UK, there are no official figures for those who identify their genders as different from the sex registered at birth.
Yeah, I think it will be drop-down menu.
Yes.
You can select, but I don't think you can put a brick or a fan or a television. I suspect not.
Well, many people have said they have identified as being vaccinated.
So go back to your original question. It's both, right? It's Big Brother looking in to see how is society, what services are needed. As Keisha has said, ethnicity, what's going on in the country. It's a whole range of things. And I think, to be honest, majority of people, I would say should fill in the census, because it does inform the government to make decisions on communities and areas that in terms of where we live. So in one part, yes, it is a little bit of Big Brother looking and seeing where you are, what you're doing, what job you have, what your age group, how many people live in your home, etc. But it does provide them with some information to be able to develop infrastructure and programs and services that benefit those communities based on the information that's provided. So I think it's a win-win for both those who take the census and for the government departments who need to be able to look and see what those makeup of the society looks like.
And Michelle Clark, does that answer your question? Why the government want to know what the hell, who the hell is living in my house? I'm not asking. She's not asking for anything from the government. She's okay and everything. Why the government want to know that, Anthony? Why the government want to do? She's not asking.
That's
anything.
A good point.
She's not begging anything.
Why the government?
Why the government want to know what and who is living in her house? She's not asking anything from the government.
Well, I think, you know, on a question like that, all I think they're trying to determine is the person, are you cohabiting, are you married, so that they can determine the sort of figures around those couples or number of people who are married in the UK, those who are living together, those households that have, I suppose, what you would call a complete family, or if they are a blended family. So I think what they're trying to do again is to really understand the sort of makeup, the dynamics of who lives in certain homes. They certainly are interested to know, you know, what's going on inside the home. They're just simply trying to understand the different genders and age groups in terms of an area, so that they can see what services perhaps need to be provided. So I understand people's reservations in not wanting to provide certain information which they may feel is private to them. You know, who lives under my roof is my business, and I understand that. And you know, I suppose my answer to that would be, well, if you've got nothing to hide, you shouldn't have any. You should be able to fill in the form with confidence.
Yeah. Okay. Well, there's your answer. Fill in the census. Let us know what is happening. Anthony may be in government one day. Keisha may be in government one day, and then we need all the information. And David may have to be looking after you to know exactly how many I think that he needs, isn't it, David, for the area?
Something like that. I will say from this, the fallout question for me has to be how long further we will have census. And the reason I say that is for points that Michelle is raising there. You know, a lot of information will be already known to the government, but more importantly, I think of the information age that we live in, a lot of our information is already in pool circulation. I think if you Google yourself, you'll probably find some snippet to yourself, even if it's a reference to Facebook, to MySpace back in the day. You know, a lot of information is collected on WhatsApp. So I think a lot of the information that we feel that we are holding onto and is secure and is not knowledgeable, you know, the government is not, it's already shared, it's already out there. Yes. So I think a lot of the census data will be looked at in accordance with what is already known to see what the value is in having a census. And I think that's going to, you know, move things forward in regards to whether a census is something that's required. Because obviously, you know, when we would have first started with census data collection, the world wasn't so connected. People weren't on their mobile phones having their arched neck and problems with osteopathy in their neck now because they're always on their mobile phone. They weren't always typing away at their keyboard on you know, typing away to give information to their banks and access and all that jazz. I just think a lot of information is already out there. So the value of the census for me may well deteriorate over time because a lot of information is already out there. But it goes back to, again, a point that Anthony raised there. If you haven't got anything to particularly hide, and I don't think we have, because a lot of the information is already there, out there, then just fill in the census form and see how that marries up with, and obviously the government will see how that marries up with the data that they've already got.
I'm just very quickly, so we're looking at Michelle. I think it's Michelle who's asked another question there. Yeah. And I just wanted to, she's right in saying that the government already know if you're married, but they don't necessarily know if that person that you're married to is actually living in the same house as you, for example. Or they don't know if that person, if you're cohabiting with that person. So what they're trying to determine, if they're looking at building new plots of property or whatever it is they're doing, and they see that a particular area only has X, Y, Z. I mean, it just allows them to know what the makeup of families are. And also going back to David's point regarding information already being out there, you have to remember, David, that information is out there with companies of high tech, the Facebooks, the Googles. They have information. You know, what do we want? Do we want government to go to Facebook and ask them to tell them information about us, or does the government want to have that information already available to themselves? So yes, that information is out there, but it's in the hands of very few organizations like Google, like Apple, like Facebook. They're the ones who have a lot of data on us, and that's the reason why we're bombarded with, you know, mostly, you know, rubbish in terms of messages and media and all the rest of it, because those organizations know exactly what we're doing.
Well,
So I think the information is out there, but I think, as I said earlier, if you've got nothing to hide, fill in the form.
okay, not because I have nothing to hide doesn't mean I have to let you in my personal space, and that is what Michelle says. So that answers that question there, and the government have people to deal with like that. But before we go, there's other breaking news while we're there. And Michelle, why don't you answer that? Have you ever done a census in the States here? Because Michelle is in the US. You have done a census in the States before. You don't have to answer that because Big Brother might be watching you. There's a breaking news that came in while we're on, and it is Alex Salmon inquires to Nicola Sturgeon misled committee. I know you're a fan, Keisha, of Nicola Sturgeon. That's your lady. That's your girl.
I am a fan of Nicola because she is so articulate, and she speaks with such great integrity and poise, and I think she's a great politician. So I don't understand what's happening. I was not expecting this in the news at all today. I've heard comments before that there might be Nicola might have said certain things or done something. And I'm like, nah, I've just completely dismissed it. Now it's actually coming in the news that she's misled the community. That's correct there. I'm just in disbelief. I still need to read the papers myself to see if this is actually what has happened.
Well, what they said is that majority of MSPs on Alex Salmon committee have said Nicola misled the inquiry. Sources have told the BBC. It is understand the committee voted by 5-4 that Ms. Sturgeon gave them an inaccurate account. Anthony, what is the implication if that is so?
Well, she's bred. She's burnt bread. Ultimately, if she has misled, even if she has misled them articulately and well communicated and well dressed, as Keisha has said that she admires her, but she's perhaps admired someone who has misled Parliament. So at the end of the day, if you've misled Parliament, whether or not you articulate it in a nice way or not, you've misled Parliament, and the consequences for that are going to be grave for Ms. Sturgeon, and she knows it, and that's the reason why she's tried so hard over the last few weeks to put forward a narrative that says I've done nothing wrong, and that she couldn't remember meetings that in fact she actually herself was involved in. So at the end of the day, there's always a smoking gun, and it looks like we found it.
And I'm sure Boris and those guys would love it based on how she has been in their back for a while. David, what do you say? You happy for her to go or not?
I plead Nicola's fifth.
In
all honesty, I agree with what Anthony says, but I don't think she'll go. I don't think there's anybody that's going to be taking her position anytime soon.
Yeah.
I think she's even with a 5-4 regards to the MSPs, there still has to be a big vote of no confidence, and I don't think that's going to happen. I think what's done is done. I don't think it helps her moving forward, but I just don't think that she'll be removed from her position. That's my thought process.
I think that's an interesting one. Sorry.
No, I was going to say, normally I'm right on these matters politically, so I'll be waiting for my coffee at some point later in this year.
Usually you're right, but I think that this time you will have it. You'll get it wrong. And the reason I say that is that Nicola, she has such high standard, okay, and this is why I'm often impressed, because when you look at all the politicians, she's one of the one politician I know that just have such great integrity. So that's why I'm very, very surprised by what's in the news.
Yeah.
And you hear one of the MPs or Scottish MP that was actually on the train and he didn't wear a mask or something like that, and clearly she came out and said that she personally needs to stand down. So I think she has this way of actually having this high standard. So I think I think this is going to be some time for self-reflection for her, and I think if someone don't said Nicola time for resign, I think she might be thinking about her position at this time.
Okay, well,
because I think that's the type of nature she is.
Well, it's time for us to go.
Find out. We'll find out. Yeah. I don't think I want to give David another cup of tea.
We don't know if it's time for it's time for us to go. I don't know if it's time for Nicola to go, but thank you guys for this week. Any last word, or that's it? Yes.
Have a good week.
Have a good week. Have a good. So, ladies and gentlemen, thank you so much, those on Instagram for joining, those on Facebook, on YouTube. And remember to like and subscribe to the SYLBOURNE Show, SYLBOURNE TV, YouTube, Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, not Snapchat, not TikTok, and those sort of things like that, even though people are pressing me because of all my antics. But nevertheless, still, I'll just say goodbye. And before I go, I just want to say that this Sunday night, I'll be having this couple from Jamaica, and Kiddis Cowens and Jerome Cowens, Brand Jamaica Pushing New Frontiers with Jesse Gifts and Decor. One of the things I find fascinating about this couple is that right through while things was happening in Jamaica, they were pushing it at the same time, and they were just creating things upon creating things. So they're coming on Sunday night at 9 p.m. with myself, which is 4 p.m. Jamaica time, 9 p.m. UK time. Kiddis Cowens and her husband Jerome Cowens talking about Brand Jamaica and pushing new frontiers as well. Sunday night is what I tend to do. So I want to thank you so much for that. And without further ado, I will wrap up with a walk which I did this morning, and I want to share it with you because I felt it's very important. So I'm going to share this video with you if I'm able to. I may not be able to, but let me see if I can. And here we go. During the course of the lockdown, I recognize that, and people have recognized that, one of the most important things that we had to do was to create, to innovate, and to adapt, make changes, to somewhat be sane, to keep sane. And as a result of that, what we're seeing now is the lockdown being eased. You can hear the traffic on the road, you can hear the children and everything like that. And you sense that things are becoming normal. But one of the things that we've got to do, and this is very crucial, you've got to maintain the changes that you made in order to keep sane. Maintain the changes that you made to keep sane. That's what you use and that you created, that's what you adapt to keep your focus in, to keep your mental health intact. You've got to try to keep it. Fight it. Don't go back and regress into what it was before. Maintain the change to keep and be sane. Okay? Let's think about that for a second. You can hear the beautiful birds. Awesome. Have a good day. See ya.